this event, the Nextier Power Dialogue. Today's discussion is centered around electricity access, the progress so far. World Bank data in 2016 indicates that 80% of our 186 million people are unconnected to the grid, but the government had proactively shared a vision 30-30-30. And there have been a multitude of activities around off-grid electricity access, and this has been driven by international organizations like United States Africa Development Fund, the United States Africa, the USAID, the Nigerian Energy Support Program of the GIZ, and the IFC, and all of them. So, where are we with all these efforts? How much of rural electrification have we gotten? And is it getting us there? Are we going to achieve the 30 gigawatts of energy by 2030 and 30% of it being renewable? So what progress have we made? And this is the discussion that we're going to be having today. And to join me on stage and have this discussion are Mr. Bolade Shoremekun, veteran in the renewable energy industry in Nigeria. I would say our father in the industry, so he's been here for years. I met him here. A businessman with over 20 years experience. He oversees the company and handles strategy. He is the main founder of the BAS Associates, a Nigerian consulting company providing alternative and clean power solutions in the energy sector, as well as knowledge-based consulting. Mr. Shoremekun is here today to share with us his ideas on the way forward and what has been happening so far. So, Mr. Bulari, please, if you can join us on stage. The other panelist is Mr. Suleiman Babamanu, a senior technical project manager with the Rural Electrification Agency, a seasoned energy enterprise person. He graduated from Newcastle University with a master's in renewable energy enterprise. He has over the years developed a good understanding of renewable energy systems as well as an understanding of ways to develop an enterprise around the industry. He's been developing strategies towards the deployment of the solar PV systems in the country's energy mix and through production, design and installation of solar panels and inverter systems. Mr. Suleiman Babamanu joins us from the Rural Electrification Agency. Please come on stage. Thank you very much for coming. Okay. So, I think I'll give the floor now to Mr. Bolade Shoremekun to start and lead us. You have 6 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to be here, and appreciate very much what Nextier is doing in this industry, creating opportunities for this kind of dialogue. I'm just going to talk about a few things. We're talking about Vision 30-30-30, and without going too much into statistics, we all know that we are very, very far from achieving this vision. And we know, most of us know most of the reasons why we are not. We have grid-connected electricity, which is not working very well. We have installed capacity. We are told of over 12.5 gigawatts, and yet only a small portion of it is actually being distributed between 4 and 5 megawatts. And it just seems to me like the numbers have not changed for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years. It's still always somewhere between 4 and 5 gigawatts. And it seems, is it a cost or something that we cannot pass that numbers in terms of what is actually being provided? The generating capacities are also not moving on. Now we also know that we had a lot of high hopes concerning renewable energy, where about 13 power purchase agreements were signed for on-grid renewable energy, solar energy to be specific. Up to today, as far as I know, only 2 companies have PCOs signed, and those 2 companies will be starting construction by the end of this year, maybe sometime next year. So now what happens to the remaining, and what happens to the 1.3 gigawatts that were promised that was going to be coming from on-grid solar? That is not happening. We know that we get very little from biomass. The rural areas use a lot of biomass, but very, very few of that is involved in producing electricity for Nigeria. I was involved in a study some years ago on the biomass sector, and we found that a lot of biomass is actually being generated in industry, in the agricultural sector, but very, very little of that is being used to produce electricity off-grid, not to talk about on-grid. Now, why is this? Simply because manufacturers in this sector and producers do not actually value the importance of using the biomass. And so it's all being wasted, that's not being used properly. Now, some of the things that we also know is that, and I know for a fact, is that solar PV is the fastest growing sector in the electricity industry in Nigeria. Not just a consultant, but also better known as running an operating company, Rubitech Solar, where we provide off-grid services. And looking at the activities, I'm sure that many people here that are in the industry and things that are going on in that sector, it's probably the fastest growing sector, not just in power, but even in the Nigerian economy. We find people coming into it every day. We find international companies are coming into the sector. And along with that, it's also being driven by a lot of innovation and by also financiers coming in and looking for space where they can actually also contribute to development of the sector. We have mini-grid sector being also within that segment, one of the fastest growing sectors. A lot of talk going around about mini-grids being a great hope for the future. And we hope that it's going to fulfill that hope. We have one mini-grid running, we have 10 in the pipeline, and it does seem like communities that do have the opportunity to have mini-grids completely transformed when they have this. And looking at the urban sector who still have challenges in paying the kilowatt hours of maybe 48 or less than that. People in rural areas are willing to pay well over 100 naira per kilowatt hour to get electricity 24/7. And these are some of the things that we're seeing. Now, just to round up my brief introduction, I see that my boss here is looking at me. I'm also going to mention the fact that I was in a seminar that was organized by the Nigerian German Business Association some time ago. And the morning session was for agriculture and the afternoon session was for renewable energy. And it was very, very clear. There's absolutely no synergies between these two sectors, agriculture and renewable energy. And it's also very clear there's a lot that renewable energy can do for agriculture, there's a lot agriculture can do for renewable energy. We need to find a way of bringing out synergy in those two sectors. And being probably the two most important sectors of the economy can help to transform what we're doing. And I think maybe the rest of this dialogue will be able to talk some more about that. But that's an observation I've made. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much for time. And I would like to take it on from where you stopped by saying there's no synergy between agriculture and renewable energies. And having worked in the field a bit, I know that there's a huge connection between the two. And of course, there's no way agriculture can actually, there's a lot of ways agriculture can actually survive without renewable energy, but with renewable energy, it can actually skyrocket. And having agriculture and renewable energy synergizing perfectly can actually ensure that rural development is achieved in little time. And talking about rural development, it's now time for me to call on Mr. Suleiman Babaman from Rural Electrification Agency to tell us more on the progress they've made in rural electrification, the strategies for the future, and how that can actually help rural development generally.
Hello, thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Nextier, for having me on the panel. It's a bit scary anytime you hear the figure that 80 to 90 million people don't have access to electricity in the country. We have the highest access deficit in sub-Saharan Africa. And it's coming from the Rural Electrification Agency, where you hear the figure that 50% of that, or more than 50% of that, are in the rural community. It's a bit worrisome for us. Our mandate is to provide electricity access to rural communities and unserved communities across the country. Because of that, to be able to achieve that, we developed the off-grid strategy, which I know most of you are aware of. The off-grid strategy is centering around 4 or 5 projects, which is solar home systems, which is targeting the hardest to reach communities in the country, with absence of any sort of commercial activities within the community. And then we have the mini grid, which is focusing on communities that are completely off-grid, with presence of commercial activities, like, for example, the agricultural activities that you were mentioning. Some of the key criteria of identifying communities for mini-grid that we try to make sure is presence of productive uses, because at the end of the day, if you are a developer, these are your anchor tenants. So we make sure that there's a good population size and the presence of commercial activities within these communities. We're also working on energizing economies, which is targeting powering economic clusters across the country. A lot of money has been spent in the sector, and we hear billions of dollars being spent in the sector, and just like you mentioned, sir, I mean, the difference isn't actually that much in terms of access. For the first time, we're seeing that money money from the government isn't being spent, but we're creating access to electricity through the Energizing Economies project, because it is private sector driven. We're also doing Energizing Education, which is targeting providing sustainable power to federal universities across the country. Any one of us who has studied in the country would know the hardship you had to go through in having to read at night sometimes without power. All of this is, we have an energy database, which I encourage each one of you to go to our website. We have an energy database where you can have access to communities, off-grid communities, where locations where if you're interested in trying to make an investment. So we're trying to capitalize on the Nigeria Electrification Project, which is a World Bank funding of a tune of about $350 million, which is targeting mini-grid solar home systems and energizing education. So for the mini-grid and the REA, what we have done is, as we know, collecting data, useful, verifiable, reliable data is actually very, very expensive, and sometimes, just like you mentioned, the lack of synergy means that a lot of people are doing so much in collecting data here and there, but because you don't know who is doing what, or sometimes the data is not in a format where usable format, so it becomes difficult for you to be able to use it. So we have taken that painstaking process of identifying communities that are going to be viable for mini-grid. These communities are going to be tendered in the World Bank once this becomes ready within the next, hopefully, within the next 2 to 3 months. We are also, there's a REF, renewable energy funding within the REA, that is also So under the NEP as well, we are funding the solar home systems, which is targeting about 1.5 million solar home systems over the next 5 years. We're planning to build 10,000 mini grids. I know that is very ambitious. Within it now in 2023 as well, targeting about 300,000 households. The Energizing Education, the first batch of the project is being funded by the federal government, while subsequently the phase 2 and 3 of the universities will be funded by the World Bank. So we've seen a lot of progress in terms of, we've seen a lot of encouragement from the private sector. A lot of companies are coming in to participate in the space. One of the biggest barriers to entry, which is funding, has been made available now. So big players in the sector are encouraged to come around to, be part of this first tranche of mini grid and solar home systems to be able to provide access to electricity for those people that actually need it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Everyone has been on time so far. I hope it continues. Thank you. So before we go on, I would like to introduce the members of the people who are going to be respondents to this two panelists who have done a very good job to, give us a concise idea of the discussion that we're having here today. And basically, we all know that access to energy is really one of the main drivers of us achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So this is quite important what we're having, the discussion we're having today. So we would like to introduce serious people and important people in the industry who have done very well. And I'll start with the President of Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, who is a Harvard Business School graduate, and he's got a lot of focus and work that he has done in the renewable energy sector. I've known him since 2012 when he anchored the Access to Renewable Energy program of the UNDP and the Bank of Industries. Mr. Segun Adaju is here. Thank you for coming. Owen Wanko is the program manager of Lighting Africa, an IFC World Bank program, and he also is one interesting person that I've met since I've been in contact with for over 5 years now, and he's been very supportive of the program in Nigeria. They started the Lighting Africa program in 2012, 15, no, in Africa before it came to Nigeria.
Actually.
In Dakar,
Africa 09.
Oh, okay, yeah, in 2009 exactly. And then the program was now having a focus, a Nigerian focus, and Allwell was heading it since 2015. Allwell is now represented here. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it and he sends his apologies. He's ably represented by Mr. Fan and Achor. Thank you very much for coming. And the next person is Femi Adeyemo, the CEO of Energy, one of the companies that's driving renewable energies in Nigeria. He's been very, proactive in ensuring that renewable energies are, deployed appropriately and in the right manner. I know him to be one who works on ensuring that technology is getting the integrity that it deserves. And Femi is here represented by, please, Femi? Okay, I thought it was represented by someone. All right, so Femi is unavoidably absent, I hope. And then we have Ms. Maria Gaetano, an independent consultant. Maria is an energy policy researcher. She's based out of Abuja, and she collaborates with Wuppertal Institute, Visions program, right? And a program funding sustainable energy projects in developing regions and South-to-South knowledge network. As an independent consultant, she has supported the Heinrich Böll Foundation in its research into Nigeria's future energy mix and the Nigerian Federal Ministry of Environment in drafting the sectoral action plans for the implementation of Nigeria's nationally determined contributions, the NDCs, to the UNFCCC. Thank you very much for coming, please. Going on, we have Alex Obiechina, the Nigerian president of AMDA. He's the founder of and CEO of ACOP Lighting Technologies, a renewable energy company dedicated to providing off-grid, of course, power solutions to rural communities in Nigeria. And he's an entrepreneur who has a passion for renewable energy, and he's been involved in the space since 2012. Thank you very much for coming. So now we've had both our panelists speak, and I would like to open the floor to the respondents to actually, discuss what they've heard so far from our panelists. Mr. Shagun, sorry, I'll start with you, of course. So listening to them and understanding what has gone on so far. Okay. There.
All right, thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sheikh Madaju. Let me first, and also thanks to our panelists. Let me first make a comment about Akiba. So I was a banker when I met her, but today she's converted into an energy person. So actually the first solar lamp I bought from my mother, I got from her. And that changed the whole game. So thanks for the work you're doing. She's also the Vice President of RIAN. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. For me, it's clearly and undeniably very straight that the only way we can power ourselves in Nigeria is through decentralized renewable energy solutions. I will probably not talk about what the grids offer, but let me talk about the potentials of the offering. So we have so much number of people who are not connected to the grid. So the challenge will be, how do you get the grid to them? But why do we have to wait for the grid? Virtually, I'm sure half of us in this room never had a landline telephone before we got our mobile phones. All right. So it's the idea of leapfrogging, and I think that's what Nigeria needs. Some communities are too far in to even think of getting the grid here. So clearly it's distributed. So I agree with our panelists. Also, from the figure that I read, I think today the number of the megawatts that must have been done by distributed energy companies like ACOP Lighting and Rubitech should be close to 150 megawatts. If not, the last time I had it, the rough figure was given was about 120, 122. Our company, we started business less than 3 years, and at the last count, we have done about 890 kilowatts. So that means we are inching towards 1 megawatt. So assume how many companies like mine. I know Rubitech in 20 years must have done some megawatts of energy solution. So that's just the way I feel it should go. I read the news, I was finding this news from Lagos. The person sitting next to me was reading this day newspaper. And I just had a glance and I saw a figure that says by year 2050, 40% of the world, the poorest people in planet will be in 2 countries, Nigeria and Congo. I've not read the details, there was scary. So for me, energy also should be energy for development, basically. And the only way we can get this on is also to decentralize the energy solutions, to get it to the farms, to get it to retailers, to displace these generators that people are using. When I hear that 80% of Nigerians don't have access to energy, I want to flip the coin again and say maybe they do have some form of energy, because they're being powered by generators. So why don't you simply, and it's also already decentralized. So why don't you just take away this generator and replace it with something cleaner, and then they have power. All right. So that's the idea that we need to put more focus on the off-grid space. But unfortunately, 1 or 2 people say body languages. Government has set a target of Vision 30-30-30. And I'm happy we have our guy from Mari here. So there's a goal to say, look, 30% of this some in the 2030 should come from renewables. Our association, we are targeting 40%. But I'm seeing some policy, initiatives or inactions that is running against this vision. For example, there's a reversal on duty on solar panels. So how do you want to achieve this number of energy when you have already placed another constraint on the technology that you will need to use to get this energy to people and hit this target? All right. Then there's also a challenge that's between governments, agencies, and even programs. There is no synergy between the plan to get energy to people and also the plans to maybe increase economic empowerment. For example, the ERGP, I expected to have seen a very strong correlation between that and energy, because energy is very critical to development. And maybe because of time and finally from my own end, I also expect to see more increases in terms of local content. And outside the Nigeria Electrification Project or program funded by the World Bank, I understand Nigeria took a loan from the World Bank, if I'm correct, to execute this project. But we are beginning to see a situation whereby local companies might be edged out. They might not be able to participate there. That means you will definitely end up creating energy. But it's not just energy for its own sake. It has to be energy for development. That means also local companies, local content needs to be taken into serious consideration. It's a loan to Nigeria. And I believe Nigeria is going to pay back. I don't know if it's a grant or I don't have the full details. But I think Nigerian companies, the like of Akko, Lobitech, Sose, that's done great very well, should also benefit and be able to be part of implementing this project. That might be what ROH should do. Hancock, we appreciate what ROH has done in the last few years, and we feel that this is the time for Nigeria to be energized, but through decentralized renewable energy. Thank you.
I'll go on from here and say, Mr. Obichina. Next, would like to hear your own, your views from the discussion of both panelists, and if you can please just take a 2-minute discussion.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to Nextier Power for organizing this fantastic event. I mean, the sustainability has been a very laudable one, and I must say, because I can imagine the energy put in to organize such an event. Thank you for the panelists and all who have made wonderful contributions. Off-grid. I must say, Nigeria, as regards the renewable energy sector and the off-grid, is the next big market. There's no denying that fact. The data, the statistics is there. How do we harness the potentials that the off-grid market has provided? I think that is also one of the things we're discussing today. How do we profile workable solutions to addressing foreseeable limitations to accelerating off-grid electrification as a whole? How do we also discuss areas where government supports for off-grid electrification can be accelerated as well? And a whole lot of other issues. I just want to highlight some of these things. I'm privileged to be the CEO of a renewable energy company focused on mini-grids and off-grid sector also. Also privileged to be the president of African Mini-Grid Developers Association, which is the umbrella body for mini-grid developers. So at an association level and as a critical stakeholder in that aspect, I can say to a great extent, we feel where we can feel the pains and also feel where the gains are. One thing I discover in this sector, the challenges and the areas and the barriers and how we think we can break through them are quite diverse. Some of them we are tackling them, the areas of technologies, areas of access to finance, areas of building confidence, the last mile to a great extent. When we look at the mini-grid and see the regulations, we know the people who are directly affected, who we come very closely to, are the last mile customers to a large extent. And these are people who reside in underserved areas, and rural off-grid communities. So what has been the approach to a great extent? I think the existing approach has been, okay, how do we look towards government areas? Before now, how do we look towards government areas? Now people are now saying, how do we look inwards on our own? We have developers like my colleagues, well, are they also raising up pipelines of projects. But again, as local developers, we're sharing our thoughts today with Bolade. Bolade happens, no proper introduction, but Bolade coincidentally is the chairman of the AMDA Nigerian board as well. And we were sharing these thoughts. How do we break these barriers? And we realized that to a large extent, we cannot fight this battle alone, or we cannot win this struggle alone. There is need to bring the finance guys, there is need to bring the technology guys, there is need to bring the policymaker guys, everybody needs, there is a joint effort approach towards tackling the problem. What we have been doing is, okay, good, how do you deal with this person? And what are we doing in the industry to see how well we leverage on technology, to see how technology advancement, to see how well on access to finance, reducing capex. A lot of us, for instance, in the association level, we're now discovering that to a large extent, for us, for instance, to be able to reduce our capex, which brings down the cost of the systems we deploy and helps us in a large scale to deploy, is actually building a pipeline of portfolios among members. Saying, for instance, Shegun, can you partner with me? Rather than me bringing this. But again, as Shegun highlighted, the president of RIE, there are also some barriers. We also believe government as a whole needs to help us. We've been saying this at different forums. The Ease of Doing Business Committee, we've heard this, they are doing this. Sincerely, I must be very, very frank. I'm not here to speak for anybody, but I want us to put the stories as they are and see how well we can help. If governments during this administration, whichever administration, achieves its objectives on the off-grid sector, I think it's a plus for anybody. They won't call me, they won't call you. It's a plus for the entire people. So our general approach towards this is, how do we bring ourselves together? And we've started that discussion. All we need from the government is also trying to recognize these associations, recognize developers, and see how developers as well can also complement whatever you are doing, because that's why we are actually here in the sense. Thank you very much.
Referring to your comments about, let's say it how it is, I think that is very important, because there's been a lot of talk, like you mentioned, especially let's just take the customs aspect, and with the ease of doing business, the RBA support, and we've been pushing. For one, I know the pain of customs, and we still have these problems, and it's still going on. How do we surmount all of these challenges so that we can actually get there in quick time? And I must apologize to everyone. Mr. Olumide Sonia of the B-Box, is that you, sir? So unfortunately, his name was like down below, so I skipped to introduce him earlier. Mr. Olumide Sonia is the manager, is the country manager for past B-Box. Olumide has over 4 years experience in managing the development of utility-scale solar power projects in Nigeria. He is also managing the operations for this solar home system company called Past B-Box, yeah? And a company that has also received grant money from the DFID-funded Solar Nigeria program to provide electricity to rural communities in Nigeria. You're welcome, son. I apologize for not calling you. And I also didn't get the memo that Mr. Carlos Luis, with a lot of names, is also representing Mr. Femi Adeyemo. He's with the GIZ and a very seasoned veteran in the renewable energy industry in Nigeria. He actually worked a lot, we worked together a lot on the National Nigerian Energy Support Program, and he has a very rich history for Nigeria because he's also married to a Nigerian. You're welcome, sir. Anyway, so going on, I would like to call on Mr. Nacho to also give his 2 minute piece on.
Don't talk so much.
I hope.
Like Shegun alluded, me and Habiba have a history. I remember the first time we met, we was 012 in in Senegal. And we were attending at that time the second global OEM conference. And we've been working together for a while since then.
Yeah.
I currently serve as market and business consultant for the IFC licensure program. Now, I will jump to the issue very quickly. Some of them already alluded. So, in the spirit of let's say it as it is, when you are in the process of creating a new market, because we must understand that off-grid is not just about providing power. Okay, from a more business perspective, we're creating a market that didn't exist at all. Okay, so once you begin to frame this problem as a market creation challenge, you see it very differently. Several things occur. The first one is that you can't create a market if there's no policy framework to support the creation of that market. As long as we remain dependent on other forms of energy that compete directly against what we're trying to do, that market will never occur. Okay? You can't create a market if there is no intelligence or data, what he's trying to do. You can't create a market if there's no flow of investments. I still do not know of any serious commercial bank who is investing heavily in this sector. None. If you check all the inflows of funds into the sector, they have been primarily through institutions like IFC, World Bank, DFI, and GIC. Okay? No bank can say I put 10 billion naira into off-grid. Okay? But they put hundreds of billions into off-grid. Okay? In fact, the guys who got the money still want more. I mean, imagine what would happen if you put 10 billion every year into off-grid. A lot of money. Okay? So the IFC perspective really is, how do we create a market that over time becomes sustainable? So what we'll try to do really is to look at the factors that lead to market creation, i.e. consumer education. Now, when you hear off-grid or you hear solar, a Nigerian's first and foremost impression of solar becomes very negative, because there was this wave where we had all the state governors doing solar projects. They had solar lighting projects, solar street lighting projects that were all failed. Okay, so perception becomes an issue. But the truth is that technology for solar right now and off-grid technologies have grown so fast right now that they can actually exist and in fact oversupply what the grid supplies. So the first thing is being able to deal with that perception issue, both from the demand side and the supply side. The second side is, if you look at the off-grid system, there are no established routes to market. In other words, he wants to supply power to a remote community in Zamfara State. There is no value chain that tracks the industry from where these products are created, where they are needed. Which means that we have to find a way to superimpose a route to market. Okay? I know, for example, that the NEP fund, which Ria is driving, has about a 70 or 80 million dollar component, which is grant-based, but it's outcome-based grants for people who are reaching hard-to-reach areas. But in order to reach hard-to-reach areas, you need to have a route to market. If not, you spend the entire money on capex. Okay? That is the big issue. The fourth issue is that if you look at the terrain, there is no big company, okay, in this room. You don't, is Shell here? Is Total here? Most of the companies playing in this sector are small companies. They are mostly young startups. They are struggling with funding. So the guys who even have the ability to bring their own funds into the industry are not playing. So what you see happening is that there's a let's wait and see approach. Once it begins to scale, they will jump in and take over our market. That's what occurs. Okay? Total has a solar play, which is done through solar lighting systems, but it's a tiny fraction of what you should do. So my point of view, right on 2 minutes here, 1 minute, 1.5. My perspective is that as people interested in the sector, we should approach the problem from more a market creation point of view, which is asking the question, how do we create a market for sustainable energy, okay, that is not dependent on grid, that is distributed, and that is not based, I must say, that is not driven primarily by government. Thank you.
When I hear him speak, the first thing that comes to mind is, how did the telecom people do this? How did it happen? Did they have the creation of market for, the entry? Was there that value chain?
So the telcos showed up and banks rushed to give them money.
Yeah, but what can we do to make banks give us money so we can achieve this vision? So taking that on, I'll go on to call Carlos so that you can further add on to what you've heard and what your views are on this, how we can actually achieve this vision.
Good evening, everyone. So my name is Carlos Mino. I'm working for the Nigerian Energy Support Program. So I'm not representing Femi at the GEMO, but rather I'm just replacing him since he was unfortunately running a bit late. But just to tell you as well, also from a public sector's perspective, the national public sector's perspective, what we think about the market. The mini-grid market have been active in the market since 2013. So just to give you a bit of background about NESP before discussing, at least giving three ideas from my side that are important and that are related to what the panelists said already. The Nigerian Energy Support Program is co-funded by the European Union and the German government, and it is implemented by GIZ, the German Cooperation Agency, in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Work, Power, Works and Housing. We work on energy efficiency on-grid and off-grid, and then we, the part on off-grid, we decided to focus on mini-grids because there were already, at the time that we came into the market, there were already a lot of donors working on the solar home system side. So we have been supporting the creation of the framework with NERC, with the mini-grid regulations, with the REA, with the REF operational guidelines, the electrification fund. We have supported also mini-grid developers deploying some projects on the ground, especially testing a model that blends grants, equity and debt. And then we have also supported a bit access to finance. And that part we started with local commercial banks, but unfortunately local commercial banks never took the final decision to go into the sector, so we had to resort for alternative finance through crowdfunding. And so there was a German-based company in the end that supported that. From our side, we have had two phases. The first phase that went until last year, and there we supported the deployment of 6 mini-grids that provided access to electricity to about 10,000 people. And now we are going for a second phase where we are going to support the deployment of about 20 to 40 mini-grids to provide access to electricity to 100,000 people. And over the years, I think that we have seen a lot of challenges in the sector, but I would say that the framework is there. Yeah? The framework has already been established, so that has already been covered to a certain extent. Of course, there is room for improvement, but you can already start working in the mini-grid sector with the framework as it is now. The main issue probably comes when it comes to access to funding. Yes, there will be a lot of grants coming in from big development banks. Yeah, this is extremely good. Yeah. However, how to bridge the gap, because this will be partial capital grants. Yeah? How to bridge the gap and bring into the sector the big players that can bring into it equity, and how to also banks that can bring the debt that is required. From my perspective, this is a big issue that has not been solved yet. Yeah? The second issue that has not been solved is the mini-grid space as it is now. It's too dependent on grants. Yeah? How to reduce costs, especially when it comes to capex. Mini-grids are very intensive when it comes to the capital costs. Yeah, you need to look, you need to start looking at how you size your systems, how you do the demand assessments to make sure that you can tailor the capacity that will be installed to the demand, and at the same time make sure that your components are not expensive, that there is a good ratio between quality and price. Yeah? This is at the moment what AMDA, for example, is doing. From our side, this will be a new line of intervention that we will also be supporting. There are two other things that I wanted to mention that are very, very important. So, Volate mentioned the link between productive uses and mini-grids. Yeah? In ENSUS, which is also a consultancy and a developer on mini-grids, taking the case of Tanzania, has developed a model that is called the keymaker model. And this keymaker model, what it says is, look, you as a mini-grid utility will never be as profitable as an agro-processing company. So if you want to become really profitable, really attractive for capital investors, you really need to become, once you have deployed your mini-grid, you need to become an equity investor into the community. Yeah, starts, for example, developing the value chain for, in this case it was in a fisherman community, so the value chain for the fish, yeah? How they fish, how they store the fish, how they transport the fish to the markets. So this is what you need to start covering. So you as a mini-grid developer, you do not stay at the level of being a mini-grid utility only. You go beyond that and you become a rural developer. Yeah? That point, knowing that the companies at the moment are very small and that you already as a mini-grid company, you need to cover so many things because it's a vertically integrated model and everything. Going beyond that and in addition to this, becoming also a rural developer, yeah, a specialist in agro-processing and all these things is so difficult. But from my perspective, this is the frontier that needs to be reached now. The other question that was, aspect that was raised during this discussion today, and that is very important, is data. So the RBA, in addition to promote, supporting with access to funding, in the end, what they do as well is to provide market intelligence. And that's, there, from my perspective, the issue is how to create a market for electrification data in Nigeria. Because as public sector, I can also tell you that from our side, we have also been involved in this sector of trying to create data, then creating modeling and everything. Most of it we did it with the Ministry of Power. This time around, we will probably for this second phase, we will also be collaborating with the REA. And in this regard, the idea is, yes, the public sector is doing this thing, but the public sector, as always, we cannot do it on a large scale. How to incentivize the private sector so that the private sector starts trading data? Yeah, that's from my perspective the point where you will go from the piloting to a large scale in terms of data. Yeah? So these were my points. Thank you
very much, Carlos. You know, the problem with moderating a session, I tell them stop, it's time. Especially when they have a passion and what they are saying is actually very important to the discussion on ground. I mean, like Carlos said, being a mini-grid developer or even an SHS supplier is very expensive. I mean, the capex, when he says capex, what I hear is the cost of buying the items, the materials to install, is almost as expensive as the cost of getting in there and doing the job. So it's really, really tasking. I say it's a blood-sucking business because sometimes if you don't have the passion and you don't have the nerve bone to just continue, sometimes you can actually do give up. Most times I say, I don't know if the Nigerian government is trying to help us to do this or they are trying to limit us. For me, it feels like a lot of the time, like somebody who is drowning and finally making it to the, and I'm almost there and all of a sudden the government just pushes your head back in. And I hope with the IEA's involvement, we can actually surmount and actually come out and get a breath. So I would like to hear, Maria, your own views. Please, maybe when I pick up my bottle, you know it's time.
As has been said briefly before, I have two hats. One is I'm a researcher at a German research institute, and I've been privileged enough to be researching on how is Nigeria going to reach its 30-30-30 targets and its electrification and electricity access targets. And on the other hand, I support a program that works at a community level energy service projects, not just electricity, across the world. It's done a lot of work in Southeast Asia, and we have a lot of know-how coming from this local perspective and local practitioners doing small-scale, community-scale projects. So I also wanted to thank Nextier for this very effective forum. I've learned a lot in the last couple of years. I think many of you who are regulars would agree with me. Having said that, seeing the title of the discussion, I thought, who is this title going to attract? What audience are we going to have here? Are we having an audience that is not fully convinced that renewables and off-grid are of incredible potential to this country? And is anyone having serious doubts? Can you raise your hands if you believe so? So you see, I think there's an issue here with that a lot of the people who are in this room, a lot of people who are not in this room are also driving the narrative of how we're going to reach 30-30-30 targets in Nigeria. And in this sense, in the sense of changing the narrative of those who are very still convinced of going the grid way, or of not convinced about renewables really having low enough costs in Nigeria. I've met a lot of these people doing my research. I'm quite sure they're not here. So the point that I want to hone in is, again, data. Data from the perspective not so much of markets as Carlos and several pointed out, but as data for making the case for how off-grid is going to make going to have development impact. So again, the point that Shay would make about energy for development is the main premise. So I think one of the issues that we could consider in terms of moving forward would be to really hone in on studies in Nigeria that make a case for how the access has improved livelihoods in those communities, and not just productive uses and how that has increased income, but even reducing expenses on electricity or generators, time saving, gender impacts. Of course, the synergies with agriculture are crucial. And all this is something that has been done before in other places. What I think would be important in Nigeria is to start, because there's frameworks that already exist on how to go around this. The only thing is that getting data also costs money, as all the developers will know. And engaging in this community engagement process also, it takes money and effort. So I would propose that that's one very important way to go forward to change, to make cases, convincing cases for off-grid at certain spheres that are still not very convinced and that need to be won in minds and hearts in order to change their narrative. And yeah, with that, I would just say thank you very much.
Thank you for making that really short. We're going to call it Path E-Box to also go and share their own viewpoints on the Vision 2030, where we are now, and what your views are to ensuring that we achieve that.
Hello everyone. Thank you to Nextier for inviting me. It's an unfamiliar territory for me. I like to work in the background. I've been in the background for years, so facing an audience and explaining what we've learned over 4 or 5 years is kind of a new thing to me. But I would try as much as possible to share what we've learned. Thank you to the panelists and thank you to the respondents. These are like people that are well experienced. Mr. Shegun, I know basically all the companies we've done DD, and you guys are actually have said everything that needs to be said. So I'm Olumide Soy, I'm the country manager of Pan-African Solar Group. We started the Kankia project, so 5 megawatt project, 100 solar project, and I think while we were doing the study on CSR, we discovered that there are a lot of communities in the off-grid sector, so that took us into the solar system. We chose time to start the operation of our passive solar system, and it was fantastic. There were a lot of data going around. 80% people are off-grid, millions of Nigerians are off-grid. We thought, oh, that's good, you know, a lot of money to make, and so, oh, let's see what we can do. But reality on ground, it's very difficult to actually run the solar system industry. Financing is one, cost of capex, custom duties, you know, solar system being, I mean, you would have expected the solar panel to be like, you know, like zero duty, but there was a whole lot of issues that came up with that, with the custom, you know, a lot of increase in the tariff for the solar system component. How do you justify the increase? You know, do you increase the cost to the customers? We run a service model where customers have to pay a certain amount for the service. If you increase the cost, then they won't be able to afford it because we target rural people. So it's. I just came back from Kaduna. I do a lot of trips to those locations to meet customers, to meet our people, to understand the local challenges. While the solar, the solar 50-watt solar system, the big box system, has really been very impressive. A lot of customers will be able to reduce their cost by 50%. RAPP, you know, went on site, met with customers, did a lot of data, and you know, we have a lot of poultry, a lot of farmers as customers. So synergy between solar system and also agricultural sector is really very viable, and we've been able to bring down the cost of their power by almost 50%. So, you know, I would just say one or two things. One is, you know, we need more support from the government in terms of policy, in terms of, I wouldn't want to go to on-grid where it's, you know, I can't even stop when we start the on-grid, so I'll just focus on the solar system. We just need the government support to ensure the policy are right. So, you know, we spend a lot of time on customer education as well in some of these rural areas. The solar has actually been bastardized based on the street light they see. They are no longer working for after probably a few months. Then you spend a lot of effort trying to tell customers this works. We started operation in May last year, and we have thousands of customers now in Kano alone. We just expanded to Kaduna, expanded to other states in the north. And while before the end of the year, we're going to the south. I think, you know, people like the S&P who actually believed in us, because we could have been out of this industry if not for them, and to help us to actually expand. And now we're in the process of scaling, because we spent months trying to get data. We feel we understand the market, the challenges. We looked at factors to actually resolve some of these issues. Logistics, you know, payment system is like the biggest one. Most of our customers are on bank. How do they make payment every month? There's a lot of talk about what is happening with CBN and, you know, how the mobile money network is really a challenge. Getting the telcos to actually be, you know, they should actually be driving the sector. Kenya, see what M-Pesa is doing. It's really been fantastic, but it's just difficult having such payment system here. It's been, you know, challenging having to physically go around collecting cash from customer. We try to even use the microfinance, but the whole lot of issues around the payment collection. And without that payment collection, how do you attract more players into the sector? How, you know, if you don't free up that aspect, then it's a challenge scaling up. I mentioned customer education, creating of data. We actually got most of our data ourselves. You know, trying to understand what the markets, you know, how much are they willing to pay. We have so many Excel sheets to capture a lot of data so that we can really understand this sector, right? So I will just leave it because we've been looking at it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
truth of the matter is, I mean, you mentioned a few things that other people haven't talked on, and that's knowledge sharing and the payment system. That payment system issue is a huge pain for us. It's one thing that everything can go right, but if you're not getting your money back, then there's a huge problem. And getting our money back and always paying money to go get our money back is really very expensive. So there's a lot that needs to be done for us to achieve this vision 30-30-30. And for renewable energy to play like successfully in the energy and the off-grid space, much more needs to be done by all the stakeholders involved. It's not just about the government, it's not about the only the policymakers, it's the policymakers, it's the private sector, it is everybody who is involved. And Finance said something about the big players. The big players can actually come in after we have done all the farming. I mean, it's been 8 years of grueling hard work for me, for example. And all of a sudden somebody just comes because they've got big money and they're going to just take it over. You know, so there's a lot that needs to be done. And because of this, I keep wondering, like, Mr. Bolade, if I don't know if you think what your experience has been with subsidies. And is it subsidies for the customer? Is it subsidies for the companies? Which part of subsidies do you think will be one of the reasons that will ensure that this vision is actually achieved?
Thank you very much. First of all, the first thing I'd like to say is that subsidies are not things that should remain there permanently. They're not sustainable. Okay. The second thing I'm going to say is that when you do have subsidies or grants, the purpose should be to lower the cost to the consumer, not to increase your profit. And then at a long-term basis, we should plan to wean ourselves off subsidies and grants so that the market dynamics can come to play, and then we can have realistic prices in the marketplace. Now that's not going to happen overnight, it may take time for it to happen.
And like you said, a lot of people are saying there's a lot of grants now for the industry, and obviously there is, but accessing those grants is also quite difficult, and there's a lot of barriers, I like to call them barriers, that the grant owners put in place. It's not really barriers, it's just for you to know how to package yourself well to achieve it, but it's kind of difficult for all the small companies to also get those grants. So sometimes the grantors have to just settle. And sometimes in settling, they actually miss their mark and don't get the right companies to actually fund. Light in Africa has been doing a lot of work in market access, and we've had a lot of going out to the communities, doing a lot of activations. But up till now, that is not enough. I mean, how many states have you gone to, of the 36 states in the country? So REA is focusing on energizing economies, and this program is for schools and hospitals. And what is the progress? Okay, I saw for school and hospitals as well, and markets.
There's education, there's economics.
Okay. So anyway, for education, for hospitals, for markets, I know that's the core of what you do. And so far, what has been the progress in the hospital aspect? We've heard a bit about what you do in the Kano market, the Southern Berry market. I've heard of a few institutions, the universities that you've worked at. But what of the hospital angle? How successful has that been? What progress have you made so far?
Okay, thank you very much. The Energizing Education project is where the university teaching hospitals form one. Right, so this project is still being developed right now. For the hospitals, this next phase of the universities, that's University of Maiduguri and University of Calabar, and I think about university teaching hospitals are going to be part of this. The entire project is at 7 federal universities and 9 teaching hospitals. The first phase is targeting 9 institutions. The second phase, which is what we are currently carrying out the ODG audits for the universities, the baseline studies, and for both the universities and the teaching hospitals. That project is yet to commence as we speak.
So, because when you say it's yet to commence, I want to believe that it's still in the planning phase.
No, I mean, it's in the planning, and that's why I said we're carrying out energy audits right now.
Right.
We're doing baseline studies to understand what's the demand, to be able to provide the actual size of solution to either the universities or for the teaching hospitals. So we're carrying out those studies right now.
If I may add, I think in this space, in the energizing education, I believe that you're going to work with developers, private developers to implement this project. And this brings me to Mr. Obejina. I'm wondering, so far so good in this space, what is the level of progress that we have made in the business space in achieving this Vision 2030? What do you say, what would you say is like, I don't know if anybody has the figures of how much of the 30 gigawatt we have generated, but what do you think, and progress-wise and the future, what are you foreseeing?
Thank you very much, Iba. Just a little snapshot into what the statistics are. I know for now the indicative statistic is that we have about 30 mini-grids companies. When I mean companies, I mean mini-grids developers that have mini-grid sites operational, about 30 of those sites presently. Again, we can very well say that majority of this that are carrying out viable business. We will also commend the Rural Electrification Agency, because as a government institution also, they have set out a standard, set a precedent by implementing the Rural Electrification Fund. So that is one kudos I will give to them in that area. So what is the Rural Electrification Fund? The Rural Electrification Fund, a lot of us have said we need government to see how well private developers can match the mix of equity, debt, and grants, and we're very grateful that has been implemented. I think the REF project is at the stage whereby the developers are expecting their grant later. But how many of such REF projects do we have? That is true. You get it? How many do we look forward in line with what we are targeting in terms of Vision 30, 2030, looking at achieving that capacity by that number of years? Another big opening we have is the NEP. And this is where we are saying, REA, you have started well, there's no perfect way about it. How well can we sustain on what you have started? There has been a lot of engagement on that. How well can you improve on what is on ground? You get it? There has been some mistakes, no doubt, there has been a lot of lessons, but when you come up with a new system, you tweak it. So the REF, for the benefit of many who don't know the REF, there is a model structured where government issues you to a tune of 70% CAPEX grant, which equals about $310 US based on the systems you are designing. You as the local developer bring in
25%.
Your equity and debt component to make it up. So I think that project in the next couple of months or so will go through, and we will be very interested to see how successful that is. But I also want to believe what we from the developers' perspectives are very concerned about this. I will link it also to what Carlos has said, what my friend has also said from REA, is a lot of statistics, a lot of Nigerian companies where you are used to do this baseline surveys and so on. How sustainable and how sure are we that when the cake comes, these companies too will be part of it? Because my colleague Bolade is here, you'll be amazed at the tons of requests for data we receive. At some point, we started asking ourselves, could there be anything really wrong with this data? Are we doing data shopping?
Exactly.
No, I'm being very frank. I'm speaking from the developer's perspective. But yes, one of the core principles of AMDA is we believe that for us to be able to move the sector forward, data sharing should be something every member sign up to. Why? Because we believe the only way we can build confidence in the investors who want to put money is for them to see what are the trajectories of this sector. Has this sector moved from point A to point B? Or is it moving from point 0 to point 0 minus 00? We believe that, no doubt. But the trend and the fear a lot of us have had is we are there bringing all these things to also hook up this sector. And even the banks, we have had cause to also engage with the banks. The Nigerian banks, I gave someone a scenario, one of the consultants with the World Bank. He was talking to me, how you guys doing, the World Bank stuff, how do you raise up money and so on. Which Nigerian bank will raise you and everything in a mini grid sector of $20 to $30 million or $10 million? Let's, in fairness, we have the banks here. Please, I want you to raise up your hand in a single digit. We've engaged with them. I don't need to mention the name. And I understand what happens with the bank. The bank is like a landlord who has 6 rooms. 1, the downstream sector in Nigerian oil and gas. 2, the maritime sector, the manufacturing sector. These are sectors that the rooms that have been opened over the years. Then you tell him that there's a wall, that there's an oil in that wall. You need to crack. They are there with their money. The investors are there. They are trying to see. Let's see the juice before we step in. That is the truth. But we've also tried as much as possible to engage them. And some of them are responding to it. And we are assuring them that the fear is whatever it is. And that's why I said something earlier. The only way we can break this barrier is a collective. The banks, they have their fear, they have their right. If I give you money, how am I sure? How do I deal with this sector? Because these monies are deposit monies. They need to be sure that these monies will come back. Yeah. You understand it? So I mean, we're very much willing and open to continue furthering the discussion to see how we do this sector forward.
Yeah, I must say that if we let it be, next time, please give us like 5 hours for this kind of discussion. It's 2 hours, it's really small. So we're going to try and manage ourselves. There's so much to be said, but I'll first of all open it up to the audience and say, if you have any questions, I don't know. Yes, please.
Good evening, my name is Dr. Oke. Observations, please.
Okay, sir.
For the actors in the sector, I think the issues they raise revolve around one central point. Sectoral development is taking precedence over national development plans. They should note that and begin to address it. Otherwise, the issue will cause consumer rights. Various sectors, and even within the sectors, there are issues. Talking electricity, we had a conversation with one of the former ministers, I think you mentioned. Then they were working on 6 turbines. Simple question, there was no national gas plan to power those turbines. But public conversation tells you you're expecting X number of megawatts. And it wasn't going to happen even if that was ready. You look at agriculture, the same thing, you're building dams. You want agriculture, but communities downstream are dying because the water is drying up. So national development plan scheming, it is overlooked in the conversation among the actors in this sector. The disadvantage will remain. Just 2 other things to draw the attention to. Moving away from silo conversations. All the people here are actors in the sector, am I correct? This is probably the second of this conversation I'm coming to. And I still maintain the concern I expressed the first time about the choice of words, the use of vocabulary, well-known technical people. This is also intended as a form of public enlightenment. If it's incestuous conversation, meet among yourselves. It will be less than 20. All of you are actors in the sector, but not everybody is. So you're dealing with a nation that is funding fiscal inefficiencies. That's why you're suffering. Because the inefficiency that will come from funding what you're pushing. I mean, I keep talking to government, it's not government. You guys are addressing. Those are the things being ignored. So you spend X billion in order to record activity, but really didn't some impact on the citizens on account of the million spending. Your challenges at the level of the government. Why would I set up in any solar facility? No, I've already did the storage, the power storage component is battery, right?
Yes.
They use car battery, which is inappropriate. In a hungry environment, people steal the battery. And so nobody wants to invest. And also for the actors in the sector, without prejudice to the effort they are making. The first time I attended a conversation on solar energy, it was Siemens. I was then on the other editorial board as acting chairman. Siemens office was opposite us in Lagos. Customer education in this sector for customers is often tedious. The explanations, they are trying and all of that. So, final observation, get yourselves into the political economy of the Nigerian state. From a banker, you come, you want to buy generators, I'll give you money. You want to set up a solar facility and the rest of it, why should I do that? Then, oh yes, that's the reality. So that you don't mistake business for charity. You can't come and cry that government is not promoting you. If I'm running a business that will survive when your own dies, what do you think I will do? I'm not Red Cross. Thank you.
Good evening. This is the first time I'm coming to this dialogue. My name is Dayo Hana Dayo, the chairman with Otebari Nigeria Limited, the first licensee of solar power generation in Nigeria. Got the license from NEC 2009. I've gone ahead of RIA and NIMET in data collection of the solar radiation in Nigeria because I've gone to 774 local governments, and in each of these local governments we've tabulated the solar data in 6 random areas. Why? Because we want to start something that's going to be sustainable. What we have done is to make sure that we do that which is going to be possible in this country. After getting that license, we have had to do a 40% local content development on the inverters and the other BOS for the generation of power. That has been commissioned. REA was there, the Ministry of Power was there, all the agencies of power in Nigeria came to do that, to commission that in Jos. The latest we've done now is that because we know the problems that all these people have highlighted, we have avoided government. We have avoided banks. Because if we were to do that, we'll be more frustrated, we'll not go anywhere. What we've done is to go into more research, and we've done a research now on a technology that is quite completely different from what the common man knows about solar power generation. When we got the license to generate power for a plant, a cotton ginning factory in Kuru, Plateau State, would have been the solar farm technology, which needs a lot of land to display your solar panels, to capture the radiation of the DC power. We are going into the solar garden, laser-based technology of generating power. Now that has been tested, and to my greatest joy to announce my coming today is to tell you that I have been given a patent right over that technology that is going to be usable in 192 countries of the world, because Nigeria is a signatory to WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization. So this is something that I just want us to see how we, if we want to succeed in this, to see how we must cover our technology. Because all that we receive from outside, as we know it, whether we like it or not, the foreigners make Nigeria dumping grounds. What they want to do is what they want to come back to the market. But if we're able to source and to do our intelligent work in order to do what is right here, we're going to break that. And it's going to be cheaper. Because with this 40% local content, our target is that yearly we shall be having about 3,000 megawatts of power supply. I'm going to prove that in the Ministry of Economic Planning, in their ERGP. I made presentations there.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. We're actually running out of time, so yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this program again. I personally have a few observations as regards customs and incentive, tax incentive. I remember about 6 years ago, South Africa tried to shoot up their solar panel development, what they did practically was to reduce drastically tax on it. So they did that for a while, and after about 6 years, they took it off and they put it on wind, on the equipment for wind. So with this variation, they actually grew that sector particularly. I love the discussion about the market. I practically want to tell you that sometimes when RWA embarks on these projects, they should actually be very, very fair to developers. The reason I say this is because sometimes when you get into universities to do a project, you do the project because you want to make a mark. But on the cost reflective side of it, it's very difficult for a developer to go back to that same university or a similar university to embark on such projects. I think you guys should look at both sides of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm probably the first non-expert to ask questions and to speak. I'm a consumer and I'm a creative writer. So straight away, I want to start at the level of the conceptions. You people have been talking of off-grid, conflicting with renewable energy, and off-grid as synonymous with rural. I think at that level of conception, you have to be careful because rural is known to be poor. Okay, so I want to ask whether you cannot do off-grid and still supply to a section of the city where you have a higher economic base that can pay your money back and you'll be more comfortable. I'm not saying that the rural areas should be neglected. We have to be careful how you interchange off-grid with rural in our society. Thank you.
Hashim from ICRC. ICRC is the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission. I was here on the 15th of August. This is my second really appearance. I want to really discuss with respect to really what I was just observed. I observed what we all discuss is about public-private partnership. And ICRC is a center of expertise for this PPP. All the things that we really raised in respect of data, in respect of business continuity, in respect of uncertainties, in respect of risks, are really issues that have already been addressed with a package in PPP. That means public-private partnership. If we can really go there, you can see a lot of almost all your problems have already been solved there. Inshallah.
Inshallah. It was comments, and I think there's only one question. So Mr. Shabuna that wants to take that question.
If you have less than 4 hours of electricity per day, you are considered to be open. That's my international yes. So I live in Lagos. I live in an estate. And I have less than 4 hours of electricity. So most likely I'm off. That's one. Secondly, some of us also we focus both on, 70% of the business and the installations that we have done are in city centers. So my house is powered by solar, for example, to displace generator. And then we do similar things to other consumers like you. And then you pay over time just like buying fuel for your generator. And then it becomes, this day I go, Lagos, and I begin to just see solar panels in several homes in Lagos, city centers. So it's both, by international standards, if you use that yesterday, then virtually all of us will operate. So we have less than 4 hours of electricity, except if you are very close to the villa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mr. Shuren, I would like you to respond to some of the comments that were made. Actually linked up with the finance issue you wanted to discuss.
Okay, I'm going to make a couple of comments. One of the things that gets me very excited when I wake up in the morning is that I belong to this sector. If you look at the existing model for the whole electricity sector worldwide, the model is that you have a big, huge power plant somewhere far from the cities, using coal, hydro, gas, or something to generate electricity. and then passes through massive lines, TCF, for example, transmission cables, distribution lines to get to the homes. That's been the standard design model that exists throughout the world. And those grids are actually subsidized by governments. Now we have a chaotic situation in Nigeria. It's not working. That model is not working for us. We may be talking about it for the next 30 years, 50 years, it's simply not working for us. But those same economies that did that at the beginning, this century and last century, are beginning to change to what is called decentralized energy or distributed energy. In other words, production of energy can come from anywhere. I have a friend in Germany who's got solar on his roof. They do net metering in Germany. He can sell electricity to the grid or buy electricity from the grid. And one of those years, he actually got paid by the electricity company because he sold more than he took. We can build something out of that chaotic situation in Nigeria. Let us look at decentralized electricity. Let us look at distributed electricity, where the power can come from anywhere. That's, I think, what the minister is trying to do, but we are not getting it right. Okay, so out of that chaos, let us begin to look at it. So, how you can produce electricity, you can produce electricity, it gets into a distribution system, somebody buys it. And if that is done, renewable energy will actually be the answer. It's going to be the answer to Nigeria's problem.
I think,
I'm going to say a second thing that has to do with finance. In the case of finance, we talked here, somebody talked about the model of the telecoms industry. I think what's going to happen in this industry is going to be slightly different. We are going to find a lot of money coming from abroad. Less than what is coming from, much more than what is coming from Nigerian banks. And despite the foreign exchange risks, money is chasing Nigerian renewable energy right now. It's coming from everywhere. Huge utility companies in Europe are looking for Nigerian companies to partner with. They're ready to bring their euro to develop big projects. They're ready to take the risks that are involved here. So while Nigerian banks are not ready to do it, they have their reasons for not being able to finance renewable energy. We are finding a lot of money that's coming in. Over the last few weeks and months, we've been in discussion with international organizations, big companies that want to come and invest in Nigeria. That is what's happening. And it's going to push the industry forward. And then along the way, you now find that the banks now come in to want to join. All the things we're talking about, data, about research, where is it coming from? It's coming from the likes of Rocky Mountain Institute, it's coming from Rockefeller Foundation, it's coming from Shell Foundation. It's not coming from Nigerians. So there's a lot of things that are already happening with finance, and it's going to build, and it's going to explode. And I would like to be part of it.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Shoreku. Talking about renewable energy financing, I think there's a lot that I think NESP has done when considering the amount of money that have come into the country. Carlos, can you explain a bit like what your vision is about how the whole financing issue is? Briefly.
I mean, from our perspective, this is at least our understanding of what could happen, yeah? Or ideally, this would be at least the plan, yeah? From our understanding, which is still limited, yeah? But in the end, the investors that are coming in at the moment that are currently financing, yeah? They are impact investors, yeah? We speak about Better Vest, but it's not only Better Vest. You can speak about Trying, you can speak about other crowdfunding platforms, for example, that are coming into Nigeria. They are doing debt. Yeah? They do debt at nice interest rates, but always with the FX exposure. Yeah? Because it's normally the money is always euros or US dollars and everything. That's the first step. Yeah. Once this step has been, once the companies reach the second step, which is like slightly larger, development banks will come in. Yeah. Actually, here in Nigeria, it was a local development bank that started even before the crowdfunding platforms, which was BOI, the Bank of Industry. But like banks like maybe African Development Bank, then World Bank and everything, these local, like international development banks may come into the sector at that point, yeah? But from my perspective, our perspective at least, over the long term, yeah, the ones that will really like give the last push to the sector when it comes to the largest scale. Yeah, it will be the local commercial banks. It needs to be the local commercial banks because they are the ones that are really operating at a very, very large scale. But there is a long, probably it's going to be a long process. From our side, we have already started discussing with local commercial banks. We have been also trying to support them in their investment decisions, but it will still take time. It is a long-term process, so you need to start now to then see that the future this happens.
I also think that the local banks are at a better position to actually drive this, because then you don't have the cost of money crazy. But if the local development banks can actually do the single digits that Alex actually mentioned earlier and do it like a term loan, seriously, it's going to be something that will actually grow the sector faster because they understand the terrain better. So currently, I'll leave the room. I'll go back again to the audience for another 5 questions.
My name is Felix Nobachu. I work along with the schools. My question is to the one of the schools is my question is really big. My question is, like we sell to residential customers at 24 as code. Now the military developers sell as much as 150 naira to rural dwellers. How do you get to collect your money from them? Because we at this school, we find it hard to get our money. We have to deal with energy theft, meter bypasses and all that. How do you deal with energy theft, collect your money and still break even, or is it just a grant-based market? Thank you.
Adedugamileke is my name. The doctor is such a polytechnic now. I also found an NGO in Nigeria. I think, I love this conversation, this is awesome here. But some of the issues you have raised here, I've gone through the National Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Policy 2015, and that was the draft for the master plan. And honestly, these are issues that normally, according to document, are already been settled. Talking about tax holidays, and in fact, many don't know that normally when you use solar energy for your organization, you're supposed to have tax rebates. Excuse me, what is stopping the implementation of this? I think if we have a civil society organization, that's where I want to sincerely appreciate what Ryan is doing. If we are able to, for the rest of it, custom issues is just one of the issues that is just writing up now. There are other things that are not attended to. So can we look at this thing holistically and pressurize the government to implement the policy? Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Marianne and I am an environmental engineer. So I would like to keep the question short, or is there anyone that's monitoring the components of what is being used, especially the batteries? Is it being followed? Is it being disposed of sustainably? Hopefully it's not too harmful to the environment. So I just want to find out. Thank you.
They are developing a new sector. They have to do a lot of activism. There is need for them to engage the government. And this engagement is, you have to follow it up. Don't give any gap. And I had somebody talking about a hijack. We had the experience with IPAN. It was the Independent Power Producers Association of Nigeria. Started together with Professor Bass in Nigeria, was the secretary. We built the sector, they hijacked it. We built the sector, we did activism. We were here before the act. We pushed for the act. We pushed for the establishment of NEC. That's why I'm speaking again for I tell people I was here before you. So I know where the corpses are buried. So you need to fight, then you also need to be very, let me say vigilant. Because when you develop this sector, they will come with the money to hijack it. Then the government also needs to actually help the sector to grow. Take for instance, energizing education. Now I'm looking at REA. Energizing education. They awarded the contracts, I think 11 of them, to just 2 foreign companies. Now you have people like Rubitech, right? and other companies that have done this thing and they are working, and you now take 9 universities, teaching hospitals, and you give it to foreign companies. How are you now encouraging people in Nigeria to participate in this sector? Thank you.
Everything you said here is in that policy document. I have a copy of it. And secondly, with respect to financing renewable energy, this is not a challenge that is peculiar to Nigeria. It's peculiar to every developing country. I'm currently working on a research financing renewable energy in Sub-Saharan Africa. The research was commissioned by European Investment Bank. And one of the things I found that there's no bank in Nigeria that will finance renewable energy because they believe the risks are high. First, we need to talk about the policy risk. We need to talk about the technology risk because renewable energy doesn't generate electricity every time. And if the bank know that you are not going to produce electricity every time, they won't give you money. Another thing is they now know that over time, renewable energy technologies have been improving. The rate at which one solar panel will produce in the past 5 years is different from what it will produce now. So if the bank give you money based on your estimates, based on the technology that was used in the past 5 years, by the time there's a new technology now, you are no longer competitive. So those are the kind of things banks look at. They won't give you money. And I noticed most of the renewable energy projects that have been financed in Africa recently, particularly Kenya and Tanzania. They are projects that are supported by World Bank and ISC guarantee. Without that, no renewable energy technology will work in Africa. Thank you.
Well, also saying, and the woman was very emphatic. She said the only time we can actually solve our problem in Nigeria is if we can sort out the issue of energy is not a cheap commodity. People, Nigerians have to understand that energy is not cheap. If you go abroad and you see the way people actually manage their energy efficiency and technologies won in a very little while in developed countries because people want to actually reduce their energy costs. But in Nigeria, we don't understand that, and this is where I also look at REA and I'm like, are they really serious? And I'm sorry to say that because seriously, you look at a lot of villages, the rural areas, when you travel the length and breadth of Nigeria, a lot of communities have NEPA lights. I mean, you all understand what I'm saying. That they are not using. They leave it on from morning till night. Meanwhile, we have industry shutting down in the urban areas without energy. So my opinion personally is that move all the grid energy back to this, companies who need serious energy. Let distributed renewables or whatever work in rural areas so that people will understand that it is supposed to be paid for. These people who leave it on for, these people who leave it on for too long don't understand that this energy is actually expensive because they don't actually pay for it. So that's where there's a lot of work for you to be done. We can give them as much energy as possible, but if they don't understand that it's a cost, then there's a problem. And I have only 5 minutes to round up.
Okay, regarding the discourse, well, sorry about that. You have that challenge. But the point is that the people in rural areas, what is their levelized cost of electricity? How much are they spending on electricity now? They're using diesel, and they're using kerosene, and they're using petrol. And today, somewhere they're spending somewhere between 300, 350 to 500 naira per kilowatt hour. That's what they're spending. Yeah. So when you now come in and offer them 150 naira, 175 naira per kilowatt hour for 24/7 electricity, what makes you think they have a problem? And she has answered the rest of the question. In urban areas, we waste electricity, we don't appreciate it, we don't pay the right amount of money. I went to school in New York, and when I was a student, I was always watching what lights I was putting on because I know that bill is going to come. Once I tried them, I didn't pay within 1 week. And I got my letter of warning. I said, look at these people. They sent the second one, and they're going to cut me off the next day. I ran to go and pay. So we don't appreciate that in Nigeria, and that is what we need to be doing.
And the next, I have 4 questions to respond to.
Regards you were making comments about why shouldn't rural areas that have grid connection. You can ask the discourse. Try and go into their area and see what will happen to you. We are already caught because of the similar issues like that. And for just like you mentioned, as for the rural communities that are paying 500, 400 naira, if you calculate, and if you give them, lower tariff, For mini-grid developers, if you're going into the community, you already know your customers. Do the discos know their customers? They don't even know who their customers are. That's why sometimes you hear issues of, the rejecting power, because they don't know who their customers are. They don't know how much they are charging their customers, because a lot of people are paying estimated bills.
So you need to know your customers.
You know your customers.
Exactly.
The mini-grid people, they know. And the mini-grid, because they use technology, just like you mentioned, if you don't pay, you get cut off.
Exactly.
So that's
yeah, sorry, I have to cut you off because I'm really working at this time. I keep seeing the flash. So what is stopping the implementation of these policies? Why are we not, I mean, the end rate is there, the master plan. Mr. Shabu, what's going on? You don't have to even go there, just stay where you are.
All right, well, I mean, I think it's a list that's already engaged, and I agree with the comments made. All these provisions are already, their policies, they get challenged until implementation. So at times we feel that there are some forces against the sector, you understand? I mean, I don't know what to mention who those forces are. But the truth is that there are provisions for this. For example, some months ago, bringing in solar panel was 0 bit. So why the reversal? Okay, so it's a big challenge, and I totally agree with the comments made here that our association like AMDA area we need to be very wishful. Fortunately and unfortunately, we're also business guys, so we also need to pursue our bottom line. I mean, I spend more than 60-70% of my time doing the work of advocacy as against my business. Every month I have to pay salaries. So, but we feel that it's something we need to do in the interest of Nigeria, and making all the efforts to do that.
And I think to add to that, and I'll take to the third question.
Hello. Who is monitoring?
Who is monitoring the components that come in, and especially batteries? How do they know that they're the right ones?
Okay. Again, we all know as much as renewable energy comes with its positive sides in terms of environmental issues, to see how well we got that. Of course, there's also that aspect of pollution that comes on the long term. How do we manage these batteries? We interest you to know that there are some companies that are investing presently in recycling, battery recycling. And this is one good area for as many people who are also very interested in it. It's a market that is there on its own. I will tell you the fears some of the local banks expressed to us in the course of engagements with them. They said, see, we feel in terms of collateralizing the solar plants, we don't have a secondary market. And I told them, I said, secondary market? He said, one of the executives, he said yes. I said, secondary market? He said yes. I said, it will surprise you to know that because of our business investigation and because of our business, exploits, there are people who leave the shores of Nigeria, go to European countries, Germany, Italy, and the rest, get companies that just go moribund and commission their plants and solar farms, and they bring it into Nigeria, and they start selling it.
Okay. So
and I told them, I said, it will interest you to find these companies, and if you need the links, we'll hook you up with them.
Thank you so much.
So it's just doing the thorough research, and you can find the whole solution.
And, we need to take this fight, and I will not let anybody answer this. I will just answer it so that we can round up. The truth of the matter is, like you all know, most of these two associations, which are like driving the sector currently, are basically new, and we're still finding our feet on the ground. But I totally agree that there's a need to actually screen more, there's a need to actually fight more, and there's a need to, drive this further. Luckily, another organization that's helping to work on this is the Environmental Rights Action, Friends of the Earth Nigeria, and they are doing serious work as well in collaboration with Rian. We've been pushing. In fact, we have a bill at the is it State House of Assembly or something for one of them. So yes, you will soon start hearing us in the news shouting and making noise. We'll come and take lessons from you on how to activate. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here this evening. I think it's been a very interesting session, and if we had to keep talking, we need 6 hours, really. I mean, and even with that 6 hours, we won't be done well. So I'll leave Mr. Patrick.
Thank you. Another round of applause for the panel.
just wanted to take 2 seconds to give a bit of thanks and thank everyone for coming. But the number of issues that were raised that I thought it would be good to just bring it all together. I think there's an opportunity. One of the reasons why we do this, there are 3 reasons why we do this. One is to share ideas on how to find solutions to challenges in the sector. 2 is to create a platform for advocacy. 3 is networking, and networking for business opportunities. And I think I heard some business opportunities here in the room today. What I heard is that most of the developers in the room have a problem with data. So everyone is spending money trying to find their own data. There could be someone in the room who could take that problem away. So instead of every company trying to source their data, you can set up a data company and provide that data to them at a fraction of what they're paying to them. It's probably even better data than they're getting themselves. If you think there's no opportunity here, that's exactly what Bloomberg did and came to Bloomberg. 2, there's an opportunity for Rian and Amda to advocate. And we've talked about it for so long, Sheikh. You've got to lobby. There's no ifs and buts about it. So it's the way to get the developers in the room to understand that they have to fund these associations to lobby on their behalf. If not, you'll be on the receiving end and the sector will not move forward. 3 is, I think there's an opportunity for us as an advisory firm to engage government on this discussion on protectionism as a way of helping local industry. It doesn't work. On a passionate ground and emotions and people saying we need to protect our own, yes, but the data doesn't hold. Yeah? So that's probably work for us. But there's also work for Emeka on the Nextier Power side to do more on customer education around the sector and where the opportunities and the pains lie. But finally, just to say thank you to everyone who came out this evening. As you can see, if you've been a regular, you see that we're trying to switch up the structure. So instead of having just 2 people on stage, talking, we thought of bringing other experts to also add their voice to it. We would like your feedback on this to see if the structure works or not. We want to keep tweaking this and make sure it works for you as much as it works to get ideas, out there. And on that note, I would say don't make a beeline out of the hotel. Stay back. I hope you came with a business card, network, get to meet people. There's a lot of money in the room. So you'll be doing yourself a disservice by just leaving after this meeting. You can talk to someone, make a quick connection that could be the answer to your prayer instead of going for another 9 pages. Thank you very much.